Sure.
Paolo Pilladi. That's a mouthful. But hey, I said it right, right? I did it?
Yeah, you got
Alrighty,
it.
man. Hey, I appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure.
I like,
Thank you for
where
having
are
me.
you at? Where are you at right now? I like the background. This looks
I,
crazy.
I'm in my living room in South Philadelphia.
South Philadelphia, Philly.
Yeah, man. South Philly, yeah,
Oh,
Philadelphia.
wow.
Got my piano over here and
Yeah, I see.
our
It's
our uh
awesome.
our greens and whatnot. Yeah.
How
So
long you been there now?
I've been back in Philadelphia for on and off for the last almost 12, 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I split my time between New York and Philly,
Mm-hmm.
primarily go to LA when I have to, but
Yeah.
primarily I'm almost full time in Philadelphia, and certainly since the pandemic,
Right.
I've been full time in Philly, and then New York is a quick train ride away,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's easy for me. But
Nice. Where'd you start? Are you from Italy originally?
no, no, no,
No.
born and raised in West Philadelphia.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, which is not too far from where the setting from of Last Call
Mm-hmm.
is in Upper Darby, but yeah, and so bounced around a little bit. Went to school in Pittsburgh. I see you're wearing a
I'm a
Pittsburgh
Cubs
Pirates
fan.
hat.
I'm a Cubs fan,
Okay,
but I have like every hat. I'm a nerd.
I got it.
But
Yeah, I went to school out in Pittsburgh
yeah.
and lived in New York and out in LA for a little bit
Wow. It's
and
crazy.
then back in Philly, yeah.
Wow. So
So
you've been how long you been at it for in the film stuff? I mean, you've been doing it for a while, right?
yeah, pretty much right out of school, right out of college. So
Mm-hmm.
late 90s.
Wow.
I made my first feature. We shot it in '01, put it out in '04, got picked up by Netflix.
Oh wow,
That
that's
was
huge.
that was 2004. That was back when everyone was still doing it was all
DVDs in the
yeah,
mail.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, been at it for a minute.
That's awesome. Growing
Yeah.
up, did you have any siblings?
I have three sisters. I
Oh
have
gosh,
yeah, I
you
have three
survived.
sisters. I have three sisters. I used to joke and say I had four moms, and my dad was like a brother. So yeah, three sisters, all I don't want to hear this, but all older than me. Um, and it's funny, man. It's so influential when I think about how influential. I was a kid of the '80s,
Hmm.
and um, my sisters are a little bit older than me, and I was maybe what you would call an oops baby. But but because of that, my musical influences and are so varied. I
Sure.
was so lucky to have grown up, you know, at a time when hip hop and pop music was actually really really good. But then I had my sisters who were a little bit older than me who turned me on to everything from Bowie
Oh
to
yeah.
disco to a ton of like Cool and the Gang and a ton of
Oh
R&B.
yeah.
And so and my dad who was much my dad and my mom were in their early 40s when they had me. So my dad was into like big band and all that kind of stuff. So I had this really varied musical upbringing that was anyway,
Oh, that's great.
I'm
I
really
love
thankful
it.
for it.
No,
Yeah,
I
it was
love the
amazing.
music. So your dad, what did dad do? What dad do growing up?
Dad was
What was he
dad
into?
was yeah, he was blue collar, man, blue collar. He built switchgear for the Navy
Oh wow.
and yeah, straight blue collar, through and through blue collar. He
Honest
used to
working
joke,
guy.
no doubt. He used to joke with me. He used to say to my hands, he used to call my hands Palmolive hands because I would always be typing for, writing a screenplay or something. So, but he taught me so much about work ethic and hard work
Hmm.
and really what it takes to put your head down and get at it. So
Yeah.
I'm
What?
thankful for that.
So were you a good kid then in school? I mean, was school something that you liked? Seems like it. If you were writing at early, sounds like you started early.
I did. I did like school. I mean, school kind of came easy to me. So I was one of those kids that couldn't stop talking, and
That's good.
after yeah, right, getting stuff done, and then just I went to Catholic school, which wasn't
Mm,
necessarily like a breeding ground for the arts per se, but I had enough. I had some positive influences that were pushing me in the right directions,
hmm.
and yeah, I did enjoy school. I liked writing, and I liked I enjoyed all of it. I did for
Mm.
sure.
What about like at what point, like you're into writing, at what point did you kind of cultivate all those interests and come to this idea and realization of, turning your writing into something more than just writing? Was there, at what point did you think about taking writing and evolving it into, whether it be stage play to movies to, at what point did you figure out exactly what you were going to do with your love for writing, for your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because especially as it relates to writing, right? Like, I used to write poetry in college and do
Mm,
spoken word and stuff like that. And it's there's for most people, for some people, there's a career in that. For most people, there isn't. And same thing with screenwriting, and someone wants to write a novel. So it's a fascinating thing to explore, because I feel like for me, it's something I knew I always wanted to do.
mm,
So it wasn't a question of if, it was just something I was always doing. It's who I am, right?
mm-hmm.
Less than what I do, it's who I am. I'm a storyteller. I like to tell stories. I do it through writing. I do it through now film.
Right.
And so, everything else was just making ends meet, paying the bills and whatever it might be. And I think, you know, I know so many good writers that were, and filmmakers and storytellers that were in it maybe for different reasons, that had to get out of it because they were expecting a
Mm,
career, some type of financial worth that goes with their writing, and that doesn't always correlate. It doesn't mean you're a
sure.
bad writer, it just means you haven't been paid yet for your writing,
Mm,
and so, but I would say again, at a pretty, from like college age, I was definitely like, this is where I'm good at it. I think I'm good at it, and I like doing it, so I want to do something
sure.
using words and stories,
Yeah, no,
so.
that's funny though. The writing thing, I uh I love to write, okay? But I talked to this the other day with someone. I said, I just not good with the whole process of doing it the right way, right? Like I could write, I could get it done, I could get a good story out. But I can't, like, grammatically. It was never there for me, and
Yeah.
it hurt me deeply because I wanted to be a sports writer, and I did. I wrote it's senior year in high school. I was covering USA basketball, and I really loved it, but that was my weakness, and it weighted me down. I'm the only one to blame. I never really worked harder on it to get better. Now I'm out of it, but that was the biggest thing that held me back was the structure, um, the whole grammatical. I couldn't do it. I could not do it, and it drove me out of a field that I saw out as a kid that I'd be doing for a career. Now I'm stuck
Yeah.
working a 9 to 5, huffing and puffing, waiting to 4:30 on a Friday, and I'm not happy. I mean, for you to there was a clear work ethic from the very beginning from you, and it seems like that was ushered down through your father into you.
100%. My whole family, both sides of my family, my grandfather on my mom's side, they own a butcher shop. They came,
Oh,
they came, they
wow.
came over from, when they came over from Italy, and yeah, very much so. I have that, and I grew up um in Overbrook in West Philadelphia, very much so Italian American and African American,
Diverse.
very diverse, and an immigrant enclave, and people who just kind of put their heads down and worked. And so that's all I really knew. I feel very, very, very privileged to be able to, kind of make movies and tell stories for
Yeah,
a living. Because because that's for a lot of people, it's not and for me, it doesn't feel like real work, like, and I
that's
work
the
at it
best.
very hard, it is. But you work for years, and to get to, one project or whatever it is. But yeah, yeah, writing is one of those things where it's like, and filmmaking for that matter is, it's not glamorous, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of dirty work, and it's hard, and writing sucks. It's the greatest thing and it's the best thing at the same time, because it's really hard to do, and it's hard to do well, and it's hard to get to sit down and do it consistently, and rewrite it, and take notes, and whatever it is. So and it's very lonely. And for someone, for myself, who it goes both ways, being very kind of personable and outgoing, and then also kind of like get away from me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need to kind of shut it in and write. It's a very lonely existence, writing, So yeah, no.
Yeah, no, I got you. So then in high school, I then take it you were very Friday night wasn't a night you'd go out and go crazy. You were inside.
I mean, I did my thing. I did my
All
thing.
right. You
I
had a
did my thing.
balance.
Yeah, what I did do is I got a camera, I got a camcorder, high eight, when I was in like 10th grade for a birthday,
Big
and
stuff, man.
yeah, it was amazing, and so I took that everywhere, and we just kind of made my friends act in movies and little
Ah,
shorts and stuff like that. So we
piecing
played
it
around, but no,
together.
yeah, I did my thing in high school though. I did my thing, but yeah, and then in college is kind of when I started writing like screenplays and started maybe exploring that avenue.
Right. Dang,
So
that's crazy. So yeah, it kind of it's everything just led to like everything bounced like it was a transition like the writing started then that got the camera everything kind of led into where you are today. That's crazy. When did how aggravating was it though doing that for a screenplay? Because like I hear stories like for me, I thought it was mind-boggling. I did one documentary, and it was the greatest thing I've ever done in my opinion. If I was able to finish something, I felt accomplished. It's the only thing I've
I don't
ever
know.
done that I felt accomplished. But
Yeah.
I found it mind-boggling when Jordan Peele won that Oscar for Get Out when he did his speech. How many years he was working on that? I
Hmm.
think he was working on that for 10 years, and
Yeah.
he stopped. He stopped writing. He came back because he goes he didn't think anyone would give him a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, is it's that trying and exhausting. It's almost like you have to believe in yourself. You have to have that support system because without that, though, um, you're just gonna eat yourself alive. How supportive was the family when you would go to them if you did to bounce off ideas and work with them on things? Did you have that group that kind of would usher along advice and give you that support in it, or was it something that you were just isolated and kind of kept to yourself with the whole screenplay stuff?
Yeah. Well, so man, that's
It's
such a layered
big.
thing.
It's
I mean,
big.
you talk about what with Jordan Peele and how brilliant that story and that screenplay was and that film was. But yeah, every film is years and years in the making. Every single one.
Mm,
Um, and especially on the independent level, I finished my first screenplay. I was either just out of college or in college or whatever. And I remember that night when I finished it, and it was like, man, this is the greatest feeling in the world. I feel the
right.
most accomplished I've ever felt. And then like, a couple of days later, or not even the next day, we went out and partied, and the next day it was like, oh shit, man, like we had to go make this thing. Like this is nothing. This is just tip of the
It's
iceberg,
just an
right?
idea.
It's just a blueprint. And so like, I bring up poetry, but I could write a poem right now on the back of a bar napkin and be done with it and be completely satisfied, right? Or take a guitar or the piano and mess around and
Hmm.
be that piece is done.
Yeah.
A screenplay is nothing but a blueprint for something much larger for so many other people to
Hmm.
to get involved in. So it's weirdly, unfortunately, strangely unfulfilling. As a writer, it's fulfilling. As a filmmaker, it's, oh man, like, okay, great. No one gives a shit. You wrote a screenplay. It was so hard to do. Like you got to get it to so many places further down the road. But to your point of both support and it's a little bit of both. I mean, I have my wife. My wife has been by my side. We've been married almost 17 years now. So
Wow.
yeah. So
That's a
but
lot of
she,
years.
yeah, yeah. So she's been through the thick and thin,
Yeah.
and that's everything. And but yeah, my extended family supportive now. I have little kids who they're super excited about you know films are cool to them or whatever. And coming out of school, my partner Giovanni in my production company, we were constantly bouncing ideas off of each other and lived that life, right? Like we lived that life of just kind of, this is who we are. This is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of made it normal for ourselves. And then, I think, again, the resiliency of growing up in a certain environment, that's easy. Again, what I feel like what I'm doing is it's supposed to be this hard, because if not, I'd be breaking rocks somewhere, and that's pretty fucking hard too. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Oh, that's no, I get that. That's crazy. So when I know that recently you did with the last call that you directed that. Um I mean, I've never talked to anybody who's done I've talked to Scott Barber, he did the documentary with the Orange Years. I've talked to a couple actors, but director minds has always fascinate me. Because directors for documentaries are much different, in my opinion, than directors for feature film. I mean, you have to be, your mind's constantly moving, ideas are constantly flowing. You're coming up with stuff on the spot, presumptively. I'm sure you'll tell me more in depth. But when the directorial opportunity came in with the last call, was there any hesitation, or were you like, this is right? I'm gonna welcome the opportunity, and I'm gonna do this. Was there any hesitation with that? And what goes on, as a director in your mind while you're doing this project or any
yeah,
project?
yeah. So again, I think there's always trepidation
Mm-hmm.
on any project, and making, because it's okay. Am I gonna do this thing? Am I going
Yeah.
to shepherd this thing, and ultimately birth it and
Mm-hmm.
see it through, which we know is going to take years to do. Is it worth my time? Is it worth my love? And everything I have to
Mm-hmm.
make it the best thing it could be. That goes with any project, whether you're writing it or it comes to you. As it relates to Last Call, Greg Lingo had written the first draft of it, so it was the first time that I had a project come to me that I
Mm.
hadn't that I hadn't initiated,
Right.
and so, which is automatic, like, all right, trepidation a little bit,
Yeah.
but I immediately connected with the material because I knew the world. I had grown up in a similar environment. I knew I'm attracted to. I write working class tales, um, and so there was a lot of it that there was a story inside of that I was
Sure.
very interested in telling. With the first draft, I saw it more as a drama. Greg wanted it to be straight comedy, and I felt like there was a balance, and we went back and forth on that kind of stuff, which I think is healthy and natural and and
Absolutely. Yeah.
and fun. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's always like this, and then it's part of the trepidation, I think, is fear, and like, okay, am I going to dive into this thing? Is it worthwhile? Am I making a misstep? I think there's a lot of that goes on in a filmmaker's mind when you choose to helm a project. but
Yeah.
but I was also very fortunate to have the opportunity, because they're so hard to come by. um and again, you spend years and years in between on the indie level. It could be feast or famine. Usually it's famine. And you go years and years trying to get your projects off the ground, and here was one that I felt like I could there was an honest place I could tell the story. And if I didn't feel that, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
And that, for me, that's the most important thing, I think, for any storyteller, is to have to be able to come from an honest place. If you can do that, then you're maybe one of a handful of right people to tell the
Sure.
story. If you can't, then you shouldn't do it.
Right.
And at least that's how I feel. I wouldn't, if I don't, story's not for me. If I don't know the world, or I can't find an honest avenue
Not
into
gonna
that
do it.
world. Mm-mm.
Right. No,
So
I
for this
got you.
one, I did, and it was, I don't do like, comedy is not something. It's out of my comfort zone, which I was
Really?
also excited about. Yeah, and interestingly, I think, my interest from a writing perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is drama, and is primarily drama, but I was, and comedy's really hard. And so there was a part of me that was like, oh shit, what am I getting myself into? But there was another part of me like, yeah, man, like dive into that, because I do think I mean, I think I can be funny, but directing funny is a wholly
How it
different world.
translate.
No doubt, no doubt, and it's a very fickle thing. Comedy is very, very fickle,
Right.
and not at all. In drama, I think is very. We watch a movie with a baby falling out of a window, and it's a drama, and we're both like, "Oh my god, that's
Right.
horrible," right? But in a comedy, I could be dying laughing. You could be like, "That's still horrible." It's a very individualized thing at times, and so I was petrified, but also really, really, exhilarated to to
Sure.
to try.
No,
So
makes sense. I understand because I like when I started writing at first, you know, I I was forced to cover certain events that I really didn't want to cover. I mean, I didn't want to cover high school volleyball or girls high school soccer in the
right,
middle of cornfields. Yeah, just in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, but at the
right,
same time, as if you want to get to that place, pigeonholing yourself into one specific niche, you're never going to grow. You have to get pushed out of that in order to evolve and change. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. For me, it was, and I caved. I could see it. Not proud of it, but it's good to have those opportunities because I feel like it molds you into a more um, diverse artist. I mean, you're an artist, right? I think what you do is considered art to whatever people consider it, but I think that's considered art. It molds you into a more diverse and welcoming opportunity when people are looking for someone to take a project under their wing and run with it. But how long did that project take you guys from pitch to you, the opportunity given to you? to
yeah,
to release it was March. I mean,
yeah, March.
yeah. How many years did this end up taking you guys?
It was probably close to 10, probably close to
Ooh.
10 years. Yeah, so it came to me
Wow.
probably Greg probably came to me probably close to I mean probably close to 10 years ago. I had read the first draft, like many first drafts, it needed a little bit of work but I was interested,
Yeah.
and we went back and forth. I started rewriting for
Mm-hmm.
him, and we would, it wasn't something that was at the forefront of,
Mm.
like, he didn't have to get it done right away, and then I kind of was bouncing around doing
Sure.
some other
Yeah.
projects and whatever, and yeah, we kind of bounced it around for a long time and went through many iterations, and but then from when it was ultimately greenlit to when we shot was a few months, and it was bing bang boom. We cast it within a month, and we were shooting. I think we were greenlit by
Wow.
the summer, I guess it was, of 2019, and we
Holy
shot
cow.
yeah, we shot in September.
That was
Eh,
quick.
yeah, it was crazy, crazy, crazy
Right
fast.
before everything hit the fan.
Right before everything hit the fan. Yep. So we shot in the fall of 19, went in Bayonne, New Jersey, and North Jersey, right outside of New York City, and had to go back and pick up some stuff. And we shot the first full week of March. It was 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I think, of 20. And literally, as the world was crumbling around us, and we wrapped, I think, on the
Scary.
12th, and the whole world shut down on the 13th. And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
we got really, really, really lucky. Really lucky, as far as that goes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, then so we did all the post was in it was during the pandemic, but remote. But luckily, we had everything that can.
That's
So
doable though. That's possible during
it
remote.
was it was totally
Wow.
possible. Yeah.
It's crazy because there were some TV shows that my dad's into, like The Blacklist, who, like, we were watching one episode right like when everything shut down, and there was like a point in the episode we didn't know what happened. Like, what's going on? Like everything just like turned off, and then it turns into like an interview where someone's interviewing the people, you know, in the show, and they're like, and then the pandemic hit, and they animated the rest of the episode, like the episodes in that season. So
Yeah.
here we are. It was watching these like animation. I mean, this is all made up on the go, and it was just a crazy time. And the being where you guys were doing it, I mean, was there any protocol given to you guys even that week? I mean, you right up to the 12th saying, "Hey, we got to shut it down. We got to shut it down." Because I talked to Dweezil Zappa in October on my other podcast, and that's what he told him. He goes, "Listen, we have 1,000 people in the crowd at this place in New York. People are here. Everyone's ready. We just sound checked. We're doing the show." And they did the
Yeah.
show like on the 14th, and then they went home and everything was canceled. But was there was there information within the production going around saying, "Hey, let's call it. Let's call it. Let's call it."
So, you know, to take one step back, I had actually wanted to push that those pickups to April when the
Mm,
weather when the green starts to come back out
right.
in the trees and stuff, because we had shot in the fall in the Northeast, which was very lush, and I wanted to make sure it matched. But our schedule it had to be done when we did
Yeah.
it. And so we're shooting, and it was kind of like, nothing day one, day two. It started being like, oh shit, Tom Hanks has this thing, and New Rochelle, which is not very far from where we're shooting, was shutting down. And I mean, when I say we got in by the skin of our teeth, no, it wasn't yet anything in place yet, because no one knew what the hell was
Right.
going on. I mean, we wrapped, and whatever we wrapped, and we got out of Dodge on the 12th, and that was it. And I took a an Uber home, and I remember saying to my wife, I was like, "Yo, our kids aren't going to school tomorrow. This is over. It's
Boom.
over right now."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, and we needed that footage. We needed that footage. So like we got, selfish. I think about that now. We just got really, really, really lucky. So I
No.
know some friends that didn't get that lucky, got shut down
Mm-hmm.
during. What a nightmare. So yeah.
No, that's great. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. I see the piano there. You said guitar too. You play? You mess around with instruments too?
I mess around. I mess around. I'm a
Yeah.
hobbyist. I'll call it a
Me too.
hobbyist.
Me
I'm
too.
like a home. I've been playing acoustic guitar primarily for, pretty much my whole life, and the piano, for the last, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years, but
Yeah.
which I love. I love this thing. It's amazing. And what I usually do is kind of right where we're sitting now. I do a lot of my writing right here,
Mm.
and when I get stuck, or I'm bored, or whatever it is,
Free your
I
mind.
go, yeah, I go over there and just bang on it. My girls though are better. My girls are better than I am. My especially my older daughter. She's really good, and it's just nice to hear. And this is a beautiful piece. This piece is 120 years old, I think. This
Wow.
piano, and yeah, just in tremendous shape.
Come with the
And
house?
no, but we got it for free, and as it happens, because people are always looking to get rid of pianos.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
It's hard to move
fortunately, I guess.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a nice piece, but it's great to have around, and it's nice to hear, and just like, you know,
Right.
I think it all blends. Like, I take inspiration from a lot of things. So yeah, what I do is, like, storytelling comes in all forms. So,
Sure.
this real interesting thing of this isolation this last year, 15 months, um, not being able to just kind of see other people,
Right.
experience other people, see people on the subway, or on the bus, or just in the street, or at a
Hmm.
bar, um, is really like a deficit of information in a lot of ways,
Sure.
as it relates to just little nuggets you pick up along the way, for
Hmm.
characters, for certain ticks and ideas, and but that's all of it. Like, I don't paint and stuff like that necessarily, but I love painters. I love going to, a lot of my friends are express themselves in that way, and I get a lot of ideas from that,
Sure. You draw
color
from that.
palettes, and a lot, and museums,
Hmm.
and things like that, and just kind of going and getting different, just being stimulated. It's all information. It's all usable information.
Sure.
So
When the kids came along in the journey for you and the wife, did that put a halt to? You're smiling already. Would that put when did that put a halt to any of this for you? Was there a time where you're like, okay, I maybe I should slow down a bit, focus on this. Life's too short, or did it pick up even more? I talked to someone the other day who said when his daughter came, he goes, "No, I went full steam when she came. It was
yeah,
because I wanted to implement the idea of working hard, instilling that. Yeah, she was a
yeah,
kid, but she was just, but you have to." instill that early so they learn. For you,
Yeah.
was it the same, or did you just take a break for a bit?
That's another great question. I want to say both.
Mm,
But I didn't slow down. My output was less for sure.
sure, yeah,
And my wife has always been the breadwinner. My wife is kind of always kind of been the stable one and so to speak. And also
Uh,
my biggest supporter, but so for a while I was primarily, I work from home anyway, so I would stay at home
sure.
when my kids were little, and so there was definitely a period there, but also very much so in tune with storytelling
Mm,
and certainly directing is kind of being in the moment.
right,
So I didn't take any of that for granted either, and I enjoyed not only all of that, but really tried to um, use it to my advantage and kind of just see life literally from a different perspective,
sure.
from a different physical perspective. Even Judith Weston. I don't know if you know her, but
No.
she is a tremendous filmmaking coach. She has a couple books, and
Huh.
she's wonderful. Anyway, in and she does master classes and things like that. And
Oh, wow.
she one of the things she talks about, and she's all the greats. I mean, she's amazing. But one thing she talked about with children is like, get on their level. Literally get on the floor with them and look at life from 6 inches, a foot off the ground, and change your perspective. And so I had taken one of her classes right when I had my first daughter, and it was like it was a revelation. I had read her books, and anyway, it was a complete revelation. And so it was all useful, right? It was
Sure.
all useful, and I think just like anything else, I think if the more you can really be grounded and in tune with where you are in the
Yeah.
world, because there's no race, right? There's no race in this whole thing. And when I was much younger, coming out of school, especially friends who had gone to more prestigious film schools, there was this kind of like race to, oh, we're gonna be the next film out of such and such festival, and
Overachieving. I got to
you
be better
know
than them. I got to get
and it's
farther
just
than them. It's
and it's ridiculous because there is no it's I mean literally, and especially in storytelling and filmmaking, there is no competition, and
sure.
and and they happen when they're going to happen, unless you're independently wealthy, unless you're financing your own projects. um it's going to happen on someone else's, when someone else says it's going to happen.
Right.
And so, letting go of that and enjoying kind of where you are at every step in your life, I think is really important for longevity,
Hmm.
and also not to have a heart attack. I mean, honestly, and not to just like burn out. I mean, so many people burn out because they feel like,
They
hey,
overexert themselves.
if I'm going to get there by a certain time, again, it comes back down to, in my opinion, not what you do, but who you are.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, okay, okay, do whatever you got to do to make your money. But if you're, if you're in it for the long haul, you'll kind of, if you can, you'll kind of figure out a way to make it work.
Right. If
You
you're
got
in
to,
it solely because of the heart, you'll be
yeah,
fine. If you're in it because your outlook is some huge monetary prize, you've lost.
that's exactly right. I think so. I mean, sometimes people, hit the jackpot early, hitting the lottery,
Sure,
but
and it's great, but it
I,
changes
you
you.
know, if that's what you're in it for, you're going to be out very, very
Oh yeah,
quickly,
it's not
because
gonna work.
you're going to get smacked around, and you're going to realize I mean, this industry is nothing but rejection. So on top of having thick skin, you have to have that perseverance, but
Hmm.
you gotta really, you gotta love it. You gotta,
Right.
you gotta absolutely love it. So, if you
No,
don't,
you're
you're
already
out.
out of it though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy. No, that's true though because I mean, you see that too. I'm a huge fan of baseball, and
Me too.
I get like I'm looking. I have bats from all these baseball players in front of me from when they were in the minor leagues, and um, some of them got to the show. I mean, I'm only
Yeah.
25, so this is like 2017. These guys are now starters in the league. Some of them though have changed. Like the person, like you go to a game like this year. I'll be going to a couple games to see some of them on the D-backs and Marlins, and some of these guys just go, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like what do you mean? Like I was. yeah, every game, like oh sure, like there's this thing that changes, and you
Yeah.
see that with people. Like people once they get there, they think that they have to cut off like those people that were there. It's just a weird thing, and then you see
Mm.
that affect the way they play. They become full of themselves, and it's weird because if without the people in the beginning, without the people, the little league coaches, without your parents. I mean, they don't have to take you to practice. They don't have to take you to games. Without that, none of this would be possible. But you see that happen with people, even in your industry.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, I think everything you just mentioned comes down to ego, and I think the greats, whether it's in sport
Sure.
or film or whatever,
Hmm.
are able to really check that
Right.
for the greater good, for the good of the team, usually,
Right.
especially in team sports. And film is the ultimate team sport in
Hmm.
the arts, like
Right.
it's not singer-songwriter stuff. It's not a painter, it's not a poet. It's an ultimate collaboration, and you're only as good as the sum of your parts. And
That's
and
right.
so I think the greats, whatever they do, are able to kind of check it. I talk about this with actors all the time. It's like, with this film, obviously we had Jeremy Piven and Bruce Stern and
Right. It's
and
huge.
Taron Manning and big, Jamie Kennedy, et cetera, Kathy Moriarty, big names, and I'm a nobody. And so, but I remember talking with Jeremy at first and everyone else saying, listen, if we're going to have a chance of doing anything, we all have egos, and obviously some are more outsized than others, but you have to check that. We have to check that at the door, and I'll take it off your shoulders, I'll put it back on your shoulders when we're done. But in this area, we got to create this little playground, this area where it's a safe playground for us to kind of, you know
It's the only
to
way to
create.
work.
It's the only way to work. And I think as it relates to baseball especially, but really all sports, it has to be the same way.
Yeah.
It has to be the same way, because you see these guys all the time come up and they pop a few. Like, there has to be, the greats have the ability to kind of raise the level of everyone else. Jeremy Piven is
Absolutely.
one of those guys in film. He has the ability to raise the level of play of everyone else around them, and you see that time and time again in sport. But you brought up an interesting thing I wanted to touch on, because I also love baseball. My first love,
It's great, man.
and I played for a long time, and you know just getting there. Like, the flip side of what you're talking about is what I want to touch on for a second.
Yeah.
Like, um, fans will,
I'm a nerd,
who,
dude. I deck a
yeah,
kid for a
but
ball.
fans will be like, oh, this dude's horrible, blah blah blah.
Right.
Just to get to the show, right? Like, just to get there, you have to be so good, right? And it's so dedicated just to get there. And it's easy for, like, the average fan who's going and having a few beers to be like, oh, dude, you suck, blah, blah. In a game where if you succeed 30% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
It's so hard just to even be to have a cup of coffee
So
in the
hard.
show, So, like, and the filmmaking is similar too, because filmmaking is an elite sport. It's very expensive. There's many barriers to entry. Um, all of that stuff. So just to get a film done, for anyone on any level, is a
Huge.
major accomplishment for anybody. And so, and then people are just like, this film sucks or whatever.
Right.
Like, man, just to get there is so hard. And it's funny, because I have a couple of friends. I was just talking to a friend of mine who is good friends with I'm a Phillies fan, and
Oh
with,
man.
with a guy in the Phillies who is like one of these, like, big balls of energy kind of guys, and kind of maybe bounced around a little bit, and but it's like, how good is this dude just to even be like a peripheral kind of player? And we're not talking about like the Bryce Harpers of the world, but like these guys that are just like, and they shouldn't say just. There's nothing just about them. They are
Right.
elite. They are elite. But
Freaks.
anyway. So, but I think about that all the time, and the dedication, especially with sports like baseball, but really any sport. And again, to me, I relate sports and filmmaking a ton,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there's a lot of. I was never that kid in high school who was just like, like, I knew so many people, so many filmmakers and drama kids who were like, you know, sports. There were the jocks and this and that.
Right.
For me, I went both ways because I felt like, especially there's so much drama inherent in sport,
So
uh,
much.
that to me it's brilliant. And so and there's a lot of heart, and there's a lot of for me a lot of similarities and a lot of dedication, and that's really
Absolutely.
what it comes
That's why I
down to,
bring it up all the time too.
Yeah.
And I mean, the one documentary that I made was involved with, well, baseball. It was a documentary I did on Jose Fernandez, the Marlins
Hmm.
pitcher who passed away. And the only reason I did that is because I knew he was going to have a daughter, and I didn't want her growing up with this clouded image of a one night, a really horrible night where he was, drinking and on drugs. I didn't want that to cloud her memory because, he was a huge figure in the Cuban and Latino population of South Florida. I wanted to show her that he was much more than a really bad mistake.
Yeah.
Because all these reports that came out, they're like, oh, I'm like, da, da, da. So I made a movie just to kind of give her that because she doesn't have him there. And we ended up winning at the West Miami International Film Festival in 2019. And that was I made no money off the movie. I never went in it for that reason. It was for her. And that was like, even with, I mean, it's just, there's a validating thing, getting to that point, completing something, achieving what you set out to achieve, having that happen, and then getting a call from David Sampson, the president of the Marlins, saying, hey, so that movie you did, Jose's family has it, and they sat down with Penelope a few weeks ago. This was in the summer. Got a call, and they have the film. They've seen, and I'm like, I broke down. I'm like, that's the whole reason I did this. Like, I didn't need anything. I didn't want anything from it. So now I go back and forth with them. I use Google Translate because I don't speak Spanish. It works. It's kind of Google Translate is it's hit and miss, but it works, and
Yeah.
I'm able to communicate with them. And it feels like, I don't know. There's so much. I don't know. There's so much emotion and connection between. I think just the just film in general, right? Just the storytelling, what it's able to do. Like you see people get out of movie theaters and they're like exhausted. You think they were
Yeah.
just in a sauna. Like
Yeah.
emotionally, how moving film can be. I think it's just a beautiful art form that's really undervalued. It's just there's so many people out there doing it. So many films out there that move people in ways that you've never seen before, but you don't hear about these movies, and
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking because you turn on the TV and then you'll hear stories about people who got famous on TikTok, and you'll hear about them every day for the rest of your life. But you have someone out there making these moving that are striking chords with people, moving them emotionally to the point of exhaustion and tears. That just you go, wait, what? Like you don't. I don't know. It drives me crazy, and I mean, for you, was that something that you ever let get to you? Was the idea of um being kind of appreciated to the by the masses, did that ever affect you and your drive to do what you do? It's a big thing. That's a lot to take in, what I just
Yeah,
said.
yeah, 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 yeah. You hit on a bunch of different things, but to answer your last part first, no, I mean, I do, like I create for me first and foremost, and then hope that, it resonates with an audience,
Right, yeah.
obviously, or whatever. But it has to be something that starts with something I'm interested in, and again, diving into and spending that much
Sure.
time on. This project I'm working on now, I wrote my next film I wrote after my father passed 12
Mm,
years ago, and so it didn't start
man.
out as a screenplay, but it kind of turned into a screenplay, and then, so no, I mean, I think if you do it for my opinion, if you do it for those reasons, you're gonna get yourself into
Sure.
you're gonna get yourself into some trouble. Now, that having been said, um, film is ultimately entertainment too, in a lot
Absolutely.
for in most, certainly, narrative features. And so I think there's a responsibility um to the people that are spending money on it, the
Right.
audience, and then your investors and this and that, to make something that is kind of worth them. It's not just a self congratulatory, kind
I
of
know where you're going with that.
masturbatory
Yeah.
exercise, right? But yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's usually, it starts, I never think anything's going to happen with something. Who knows? I
Right.
think I say to people all the time, listen, I think here's what I think. I think I know I'm going to make something meaningful. I know I can make something I think you'll be proud of. Anything more than that, I don't know. I don't know what audiences are going
It
to
takes on its own
gravitate
life.
towards. You just don't know, right? And I used in a previous life, I did concerts. I did concerts for a long time,
Really?
produced and promoted concerts. And I remember
Awesome, man.
talking to various artists, and we're just like, oh, someone would be like, man, kind of, I don't not use the word hate, but I don't like my audience isn't who I thought it was going to be. And it'd be like a singer songwriter, and then his audience was, a bunch of like, drunk college bros or
I
something.
know that. I work at
And
a
it's just
local
like,
theater.
but it's like, hey man, you have an audience. Like, are you, I remember having these conversations, like, are you happy with the work you're putting out? Or are you pandering to that audience? Or are you making music that means something to you? If it means something to you,
Do
then
it.
you can't control who at least someone likes it. But I mean, but seriously, like, you can't control who where it goes from there. Once it's out of you, it's gone anyway. It's
Right.
out of your control. I learned, it took me a long time to stop worrying about and what's out of my control. And once a project's done, like once you're done with it, it's out of your control. Ultimately, it goes into
Hmm.
many, in our case, it goes into many other hands. Like, it goes in, distributor and marketing, and
Oh, that's a
it just
headache.
it becomes a different beast. It's gone at that point from you. So yeah. So I don't know. I hope I answered that. I forget that. Honestly, the first
No,
part of the
man.
question was
You're
was
good.
was
You're
deep.
good.
Was
You're
deep.
good.
So
I didn't so you worked at a concert, so you produced stuff like that. Like what kind of were the acts? Like I work at a local theater, like what on one day we could have Paul Anka, the next day we can have, the great Ted Nugent. And then,
yeah.
the next day we can have Engelbert Humperdinck, and then we can have uh uh who is it, like Richard Marx, all in one week. It's very,
Yeah.
it's very mixed. Small theater only holds 900 people, so it's very intimate
Yeah.
experiments. For you, what kind of gig did you have in there? Was it just producing shows, booking, stuff
Yeah.
like that?
Well, you're in Chicago, right?
Sure am. Yep.
Yeah. So Chicago's a great music town, and
The blues, love it.
yeah, the blues, electronic music was really, really, like, house music, especially,
Hmm.
and was really, Chicago has a stronghold for a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff. Um, so yeah, so I mentioned early on, one of my, support groups, my partner coming out of college, we started our company, and he was already doing shows at a small club, and
Hmm.
and and we just started doing, at the time, which is called electronic music. Now it's EDM, but we were just started doing them in like warehouses in
Yeah.
West Philly and places, and just to kind of pay the bills in order for us to make our own art,
Right.
ultimately. And we were doing raves and jungle music, and drum and bass and stuff like that. And so, uh, you know, it was a bit of having good taste,
Sure.
knowing what people wanted, and then also finding this, right place, right time in this world that the mainstream concert promoters didn't have a firm grasp on. So we
Sure.
started taking, the underground warehouse music, and kind of bringing it into more established venues, and then we
Right.
were able to kind of carve a niche with hip hop, and the Roots, and those guys were just kind of like really, really popping off at the time, and Mos Def and Talib Kweli and those kind of guys. And so we started doing like hip hop. They dumped us on like a Monday night,
Wow.
and whatever. We just started doing our thing, and we were young, man. I was in my early. I was 22 years
Oh
old, and
wow,
and
really young.
just doing like, yeah, and but then basically doing shows from like 100 people, warehouse or small bar things, to venues like you're saying, about 700 to 1,000 people,
Mm.
to then doing big like multi-day music
Wow.
festivals.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So yeah, 15 years. I think 15 years or so we did that for. So
Wow, man.
that was another thing that kind of pulled us out of doing films for a while, because we got successful at that. So it was hard to do kind of both. But at some point, I kind of got tired of promoting other people's art, and I wanted to
Wanted to
do
do
my
your
own.
own
But
thing.
yeah, a little bit. And also, music, the concert game is a young kid's game. You get to a certain age, it's like you can't be out doing shows I mean, you can be if you want to run yourself into the ground, but
Right.
three nights a week is a lot for for an old guy like me. So
Well, the one thing I wanted to get into before I wrap this up was the involvement with a production that came out. It's very timely. The material is very timely um, to now. It's always been timely, but more relevant over the past year. Was the project I Can't Breathe? Getting involved with that. Um, Obviously, coming from where you're coming from, very diverse, multicultural. You go a block this way, you have this ethnic group. You go half a block this way. It's like the whole world in a very small area, dense area. What did that project mean to you to take on, to be just a part of that project and the message that that's resonating now over the past year with this fight, this cry for change, this demand for justice and accountability at the highest of levels. Um, what do you what do you think needs to be done growing up in an area like where you're from to kind of uh, rid the violence? Do you believe there's a solution to the violence that's plagued the city and the surrounding suburbs of Philadelphia? And if there is, how do you get to that point? Is it achievable?
Man, I think the more that we continue to speak up, the more the only solution is to continue to be louder than it, right?
Right.
And be
Hmm.
louder than than turning your back to it. And to me, that's again tip of the iceberg starting,
Sure.
but I think storytellers, and certainly as you get more and more influential, and
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily one of those, but I do hope that most of the stories I tell have something to say, especially
Right.
from a social. I come from a very I have a political science background as well, and so I come from a very
Wow.
social political kind of background, which interests me. So that story, I Can't Breathe, yeah, was unfortunately remains very topical,
Right.
and there's just stories that need to be told. And I think the more and more, and you're starting to see finally some divergent voices come
Sure.
out. But I think it has to not only continue, but I think all it's especially in filmmaking, because filmmaking is so um I joke around and say it's the ice hockey of the arts, right? Because it's just so expensive, even to do
Right.
something small. And it's easier now with your iPhone, this and that, but it's still kind of hard. There's just barriers that to at every point, because the powers that be, much like the rest of the country, don't want to let other people in.
Right.
And so, for me, um, I'm a middle class, middle aged white guy now, but I come from an immigrant background, and a very much so a lower middle class,
Hmm.
working class background. And they're the stories that I'm interested in telling. And if I can help tell other stories that help, if I can help tell stories that continue to push either the envelope or open up other eyes, because the one thing film has that a lot of other mediums don't is you can get a wide audience, and there's
Right.
a lot of people get their history through film in a lot of ways, right? And so I think the more, if you can make smart films without making sloppy either propaganda one way or the other, and I think it's really, I think it could be both entertaining and enlightening. So,
Absolutely.
that project was important. I have a project called Brotherly Love that I've been trying to get off the ground for a good bit of years, which do a little homework on, is about this whole move fiasco back in Philly in the mid '80s, and where a bomb was dropped on an
Wow.
African American Back to Nature group, and they let it burn, and all this, and just
Wow.
a crazy, unfortunate, um, you know era in Philadelphia, but also in America. But you
Sure.
see, you see that unfortunately that story, which happened in the 70s and 80s, is still relevant now because we can't get out of our own fucking way,
which is
as
crazy.
a
I don't
as a
understand
country.
it. I mean, like, I don't like the fact that this is, that people, yeah, you're still talking about it. Yes, is it going to be able to get completely, rid of it? Sadly, the answer to that I think is no. But I think there's so many different things that we could do. I mean, just being like, I don't know how hard it is to be just nice. And the sad thing is, though, that stuff isn't something that like you teach yourself to do. That the hate for that is all it's all fostered on the home front as a kid. No, I mean, you see kids, they're the most they're the most honest and welcoming people ever. I mean, they'll get along with anybody.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't see color. I mean,
yeah,
generally nobody should see it, but they're the perfect example of that. But what changes? Like, I don't know at what point. I mean, that's something that's taught at home, and that's the scary thing. Like that, there's so much of this hate and you know, desponding views on people, all fostered inside the homes of the people in this country and world. I don't. It's very confusing to me, very
mm,
alarming, and I think you see there's a lot of people who are resorting to homeschool now because they don't want to have to explain these things to them because they're
mm.
fearful of, you know, you can have an African American, young boy come home and go, "Hey, today we learned what's this about? Am I going to have to be worried about?" It's like it's the it's just sad that you have to talk about this stuff still, but the only way we make advances is by continuing to be full force on. Those protests, those marches for change, those can't stop. They could be,
No doubt.
they could be done differently, but they can't stop. Just like you see
No
after
doubt.
shootings, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Like after Vegas, well, that gets swept down. Then a couple months later, well, now we got a big one. No, 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 no. Let's get back to Vegas. Let's figure that out first. Let's get resolve here. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
happen, but
Yeah, I listen. I mean, man, that we could talk about this for a long time, but
crazy.
a lot of that has to do with media cycles
No,
for
I
one
know.
thing, just going on to the next thing, but also and then the politics of the NRA and how
Oh, it's a
powerful they are
nightmare.
and all of that kind of shit. But yeah, I mean, I have family and I have friends in various other countries, and they can't understand how we can't get our heads around the gun
It's
problem in
crazy. I don't
America,
understand
and
it.
they're like, it's real simple, you take the fucking guns away, like in Italy, for
Right,
example,
right.
you can't have a handgun, right? In Italy you can have a shotgun for hunting, and that's
Right.
it. You can't have a handgun. You can't have one. You're not. It's illegal. And in the UK they're illegal. Like it's really not that hard. It is that hard in this country, and it gets back to it's a deeper conversation. But I
Sure.
do think I mean I think a lot of it is like you're right. I think it's learned behavior, and I do think again, I think you have to be louder than it. So I think you have to tackle it head on. As a parent,
Right.
I need to talk to my daughters, and my daughters are half Latina, but they they're white girls. They look like white girls, and so we talk about all of that. And I think you know talking about
It's
everything,
important.
certainly to children, because you're right in the sense that it is not it is a there that is learned behavior. It is not something that humans are ingrained with
Right.
to hate. In fact, it's just the opposite. We want to be loved and love by nature. We want to be accepted. We want to feel loved.
Absolutely.
So it's totally the opposite. So I feel like for me, the more ideally people go out there, get out there
Right.
and experience other people, experience other things. Um, and even now with myself, I'm pretty well set in my ways politically and stuff like that. But even listening just to the other side to understand what it is they're even trying to like get across, so that we can maybe come to a better understanding, because otherwise we're literally going to kill each other,
Oh
and
yeah, there's no yeah.
so, and in Chicago, I mean, Chicago, like Philly, I mean, has really, I mean, Philly this year, I mean, really, the
It's
murder
horrible,
rate is
man.
insane. And it's just, it's almost like it's like a video game, it's like a video, it's like
Sadly.
Wild West. And so, things have to be done, but I don't think it doesn't get done without people being vocal.
Right.
and people stepping up, on the local level, on a very local level. You have to step up. You can't let you just can't let any of it slide. And I
Hmm.
think there was a long period of time, certainly when I was younger, and growing up, where white people in particular just let shit slide, man. And that time is
It's
way over. It's way over.
right.
And I think more people, honestly, at least my age, and I think that maybe your generation too, especially, um, is tuned into that. I think my generation came along
Absolutely.
slowly to that, but I think your generation is
More
much
in
more in tune
tune.
to that. And so I do think there will continue to be change, but it has to be constant every day. There's no letting the foot
Right.
off the
You
gas when
can't
it
let
comes to
up.
it.
I mean, it's just no, absolutely. And I kind of just summarize all that up into one thing is, down in Chicago when they had the Black Lives Matter, marches and stuff. A lot of them were great, really great. And then you have these people in there marching with the signs saying, the counter to that, the whole all lives matter thing. And you have these people then, beat up this homeless person when they're asking for change. It's like, get away, get away, get away. And then he gets away. It's just all lives matter. It's like that's the issue. It's like, wait a
Yeah.
second. Let me just rewind what you just did here. So you have a sign. Once you read it, and like that's the problem.
Hmm.
It feels like, oh, if I do this, maybe I'll be okay. But I don't know. It's crazy, man. That is like a 10-hour conversation. But
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
well,
And
hey,
a word, and listen, and a worthy one, and one that I think you should talk
needs to
to
happen. It needs to be
with
done.
with I would talk about it with every single person you have on your podcast,
I have
because
to.
you're exactly right. Everyone has to, because it should be at the forefront of everyone's lips at all times. It really should, because
Hmm.
otherwise we're not progressing. We're
Right.
and more importantly, we're holding people back. That's when I say we, I mean white people in particular, but
Yeah.
are holding people back. They just are, and consciously or subconsciously, so the more it's talked about, the better.
Right. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, me too, and thank you for having me. It was
You
great.
bet.
It was
Well,
great.
hey, you take care of yourself.
You
Alrighty.
too, man. Talk
Bye.
to you soon.